Out a tweet at about 1:30 this morning, and I said I was not planning on doing show prep till 1:30. But Ursula, I am telling you, as crazy as these times are, and as much as I chronicle the craziness on a daily basis, I just felt like we kind of went next level in the last 24 hours in all the craziness.
I know. There are a couple of stories that really rise to the top.
Oh, my goodness. I mean, locally, nationally, these celebrities, Felicity Huffman and Deborah Messing, they're...
Deborah Messing? She also?
No, not Deborah
It's
Messing.
Lori Loughlin.
Yeah, Deborah Messing's in the news for some other craziness today. Lori Loughlin from Full House.
Yeah.
She was a cutie.
Well, that doesn't matter.
No, it does.
Whatever.
No. It's the cute ones always fall the hardest, Ursula. So we find out that they've been using other people's children to take their kids' SAT and ACT scores, that in some cases they're bribing coaches. And
this is all to get into some top colleges.
The most elite, the A-list schools. And you got all these Hollywood people who are always screaming at the top of their lungs about the immorality of politics and politicians they hate because they're liars. And we find out that they're willing to screw over other people's children so that their kids can get a spot that's not deserved. And on it goes. It has been just a wild ride in just assembling the stuff we have to talk about today. And so, without any further ado, let's get right to our top story.
The Big Lead. Top story.
And by the way, I do have some further ado. Remember that story yesterday, the Lake Stevens dad?
Yeah, the homeowner.
He found out that a guy had been squatting in his garage. The guy had assembled a arsenal of machetes and knives and ball-peen hammers so that if anybody ever came in the garage, he would have within arm's length a deadly weapon to kill. And so his mom rents a duplex that is... she can see the garage, and she calls her son and goes, that really strange man that you hired is still out there. And the son said, I didn't hire any man to do any work. So the dad comes to his place with his 21-year-old son and his son's buddy, and they go and confront this heavily armed man in the garage.
Yeah, because as we explained yesterday, he doesn't use his garage except for...
It's a workshop.
It's a workshop,
Yeah,
so he doesn't
he repairs electric wheelchairs.
Yeah, so he didn't know this was happening until his mom alerted him.
Thank goodness this man is a legal gun owner, because we could have had a triple homicide with him and his son's buddy. So you're going to hear that story coming up at 12:30 this afternoon. Dave Wyman's going to join us. But there's one story I want to spotlight today. I didn't have a chance to get to it. The Seattle Times did a great story, wonderful reporting. I always give attribution, even though they never give attribution to me. But the Times had a great story about the viaduct and how much property values have skyrocketed. And one theme of this show, the last few days that I've been on the air, is how the average person, the working class, the middle class around here, is getting screwed over because our one-party government, the Democrats, have been working with some of the wealthiest developers and real estate owners to make sure that they can get next-level wealth built on your money, even though they have thousands, tens of thousands more wealth than you or me. And they use this corrupt local government that we have, and it is a corrupt cesspool, right now in Seattle and King County. And when you see the insider dealings with Dow Constantine and Peter Rogoff at Sound Transit, not to watch out for the taxpayers, not to improve transportation in the region, but to screw you over. Sound Transit has been constructed to make a lot of really rich people even wealthier through your and my hard work. And it's not just Sound Transit. The Seattle Tunnel Project is a perfect example of that. And this is another I told you so. Because when they were evaluating the replacements for the viaduct, they had this study. The viaduct has to come down because an earthquake will bring it down. It's an urgent problem. But then the urgency disappeared. They were willing to risk the lives of tens of thousands of people because their top priority became, how do we extract maximum money out of working class people here in the Puget Sound area? They could have shored up the existing viaduct and brought it up to seismic ratings where they could be reasonably confident that it would not come down if the big one hits. They could have done a Elliott Bay Bridge, which was the plan that I supported, where instead of going underground, you'd come out of the Battery Street Tunnel, and then you would have a beautiful landmark arcing bridge over Elliott Bay that would then reconnect with Highway 99 south of the football and baseball stadiums. That would have been a fraction of the cost. They could have done a cut and cover tunnel. That would have been a fraction of the cost. But they went with the most expensive and the riskiest of all the options, the deep bore tunnel. Why? Well, with the deep bore tunnel, it was the most expensive, which means the contractors and the labor unions would get the maximum amount of tax dollars for themselves. And so that's number one reason. And then this wonderful bit of reportage by the Seattle Times and their real estate writer, Mike Rosenberg. Martin Seelig, one of the wealthiest people in our state. He built the Columbia Center, the landmark building in downtown Seattle. Martin Seelig, well connected to the politicians behind the tunnel project, he bought a century-old drab office building for $44 million. It was connected to the viaduct. It had to be torn down. And so he's building an 18-story apartment and office building in its place. Another investor spent $50 million to buy and renovate another aging building. The owner then flipped that property for a $186 million profit. Now, I want you to think about this. While you are paying skyrocketing taxes, and again, the tunnel is not a Sound Transit project, but you are going to be on the hook, you and me, for hundreds of millions, possibly billions. I'll put my money on billions. They haven't announced the total overruns for the tunnel, but I think it's going to be over $1 billion. You and I are on the hook for this. And what's our benefit? Well, instead of a beautiful view of the water, a couple minutes of respite as you're driving to and from work, but you could look out over Elliott Bay and perhaps see a sunset on your way home from work, or see just the beautiful sparkling water on a summer morning on your way into work. Yeah, you got to drive through a dank tunnel now. So you lose on the view, you lose on the taxes, and who gains? Well, the politicians, because when you have developers and labor unions beholden to you, then you have power. And that's all these politicians are working for, is power. They're not trying to do right by the people. They are certainly not trying to improve this region. They just want power, because power is an aphrodisiac. And so the politicians get what they want, and the developers. And yes, I believe that there are, and I don't have the documents, but do I believe that these politicians are richly rewarded, not just with power, but in other ways? And we've seen that with the lying Seattle City Councilman Rob Johnson, who somehow got a sweet gig with the new Seattle NHL team. So he can continue to work feverishly to screw over taxpayers. So you lose your view, you lose hundreds of dollars a year in extra taxes. The politicians get more power, and I just told you about the buildings they flipped for a $186 million profit. Another block north of that, Gonzaga University. They were given a parking lot by a philanthropist about 4 years ago. And Gonzaga said, you know what, we're just going to develop that ourselves. We're going to put a 17-story apartment complex on the site. They're going to turn that into hundreds of millions of dollars in wealth for an already very wealthy private university. 24 major projects within a quarter mile of the viaduct have been put underway. And they are making a fortune. And again, it's $200 a time from you, $300 from me, $400 from your brother. And it's all going to the developers. Assessed value of property within a quarter mile of the viaduct has gone up 59% since 2011. The Seelig project, Martin Seelig, it's on land owned by the Jacoby family, which owns Windermere Real Estate. They've had property down there for more than 50 years. But if they could get the taxpayers to pick up the bill for tearing down the viaduct, well, they could get even wealthier. Short-term property flippers down by the viaduct have made a median of $11 million on their flips. At 2nd and Stewart, 2 blocks from the viaduct, a real estate company bought a plot of empty land for $9.7 million in 2012. Then they built an apartment complex at a cost of $95 million. They have now sold it for $130 million. They made $25 million, boom, like that. You paid for it. You work your butt off so you can give your money to the wealthiest developers. And that money then gets into the hands of the corrupt single party that runs this region. And on it goes. Want any more? Or are you sick to your stomach thinking about all this? How about this Hudson Pacific Properties? They raised the value of their block from $25 million to $131 million. And the beat goes on. The beating goes on. But this is what I've been talking about for years, that we have a political structure that is designed, as long as Democrats have control of everything, they will tell these lies about how they care about the poor and the working class, and then they construct deals that make taxpayers pay for the most expensive projects so developers can increase their wealth by billions of dollars. It's nauseating. We are at a nauseating time in local politics. And the fact that so many people continue to put up with it is mind-blowing to me. That you continue to buy the lies of the party of the people, right? Okay, all of that is your big lead for today.
The Big Lead on KIRO Radio.
And I got a lot more. I am just barely chipping off a little cube of the iceberg. Up next, we will talk with a Lake Stevens dad who encountered a presumed drug vagrant with a deadly arsenal in this father's garage. Wait until you hear the encounter next. More craziness as we get rolling here on a Tuesday afternoon.